capacities. One wants to be in the construction business, someone wants to be a project manager, while one wants to be a furniture designer. Someone may like working with heritage sites, and someone might want to be an academician. But how could one course fit it all? At JSA, you get to choose the kind of architect you want to be. Let's see how. Now, here we have a story of an architecture student, Ishita. Now, Ishita is curious about how things are built. She soon joins Jindal School of Art and Architecture and walks into the campus. At a wood workshop, students are making a box. She learns the proper technique and how to use the right tools. She also cuts up a wood using jigsaw. She's being very careful and a little nervous as well. Now she's the handy one at home, tending to repair like fixing the kitchen cabinet. She's excited by what she's learning and she's proud of what she has achieved. She has gained an interest in the process of making and working hands on with materials. Finally, Ishita finds her path to different courses. Now we have the story of a high school kid who likes gaming. And he's playing Fortnite where he is interested in the building aspect of the game, which drives him towards the field of virtual architecture. He's curious whether architecture exists only at site or it can be taken to the digital platform as well. Now he goes to a JSA open house where the executive dean of JSA, Professor Joydeep, explains how one can explore their field of interest but still pursue architecture at JSA. He realizes that experience at JSA in his first sem is like a Pandora box opening up. He learns a lot of new things in a small time at one place. As he proceeds towards the senior years, choosing his seminars and minors, he starts working on major projects for his field of interest, which was virtual designing. Now, with the help of his professor Kil J, who's from South Korea, he gets opportunities to work on major projects related to 3D space designing and virtual development. This was when he realized that he has found the place where he belongs. Now we have Anamika, a girl from Calcutta. During her second semester as a part of the foundation atelier, Anamika and fellow students were working with the folk puppetry studio. She learned how it was more than just a colorful building in the neighborhood, it was also a safe haven for the community's children. That was her first introduction to grassroots initiatives making a change. She then looks for more grassroots organizations in her home city Calcutta with different urban and environmental concerns. She works with an organization that came together during the pandemic to work towards the resurgence of the handicrafts industry. The researches different art forms, crafts, and design events around the country. The crafts module that she took in her first semester had opened her eyes to the worlds of South Asian crafts. She attends a workshop by a collective in Kolkata. They curate an exhibition at a museum. It raises awareness about ecological issues. She gets an internship at the collective as well. She collaborates with other organizations as well. Taking that environmental anthropology cross selective, it gave her insights into the field. Today, she is a part of the Occupy Climate Change movement through JSAA, working with students, professors, and professionals from all over the world. This gives her the platform to bring together all her experiences and build further on her research with the global community. So this is what different individuals experience at JSA. If you want to do that yourself, come.
Great. Thank you so much, Dion. Um, this was a
All
debut
right.
video made by one of your DQ student
Okay.
in his our third year at JSA for the BIOC. So I
Fantastic.
think, yeah. So I think Professor Abu has joined.
He's joined.
We can
Okay.
start now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So let me share my screen. Right. So thank you all for joining in today. For this special series called Design Nuances Edu series. The objective of the series is the three primary objectives here. One is to learn the nuance of a new topic specific to design, architecture, or fashion. The second one is to get introduced to a new school and understand their purpose. And the third one is to interact with an expert from industry and absorb the knowledge that they have to share. Um, I like this topic today, cinema and architecture, but I'll talk a little more about it in a bit. Um, the protocol that we'd like to follow in this webinar is about 15 minutes for to discuss about the school. Mr. Azad would probably discuss that, and then we have about 30 to 40 minutes about the topic, and then a 20-minute Q&A session. We should finish by about 10:30. Do keep your microphones on mute. If you have comments or answers to questions, you can type it out in the chat. Switch your webcams on. If you want to unmute and ask your question, you're most welcome to. But please raise your hand and ask for a chance, and we'll moderate that in. Right. The next thing is today, yeah, we have cinema and architecture as a topic, taken by Professor Abu Talha Farooqi. He's an assistant professor and assistant dean of internships and industry interface. And this topic is very, very interesting because it's really a transdisciplinary subject, right? How you marry cinema and architecture. And it's applicable to students to all aspirants, whether you're a design aspirant or a fashion or an architecture aspirant or interior design. Um, what happens really is what we are learning here is how we are getting inspired from one area and applying that knowledge into another area of our expertise, right? So this is a beautiful concept, um, more transdisciplinary, and something that we are seeing a lot more in common these days. It helps you become a specialist and identify your area of interest and work in a very special area, and helps make you unique. So very important that so very glad that all of you have made it here today. A little bit about Professor Abu Talha Farooqi. He's practiced and taught architecture for over 10 years and has headed design studios, theory and research courses, and sustainability related courses in his teaching career. He is a BEE certified master trainer of the ECBC, or Energy Conservation Building Code of India. And he's trained professors and government officials all across India for implementation of ECBC. As an academician, he has strong beliefs in reinventing education models to equip the architecture student in responding to the built environment issues. Um, Built environment, a very nice term, because whatever we are doing, whether it's architecture or design or fashion, we are part of the built environment, right? So there's a huge and this term encompasses everything we see around us today. So when not teaching or doing research, he's reading Urdu classical ghazals of Mir Ghalib, Faiz, and or feasting on new wave cinema or listening to fusion classical music. So Professor Abu, thank you so much for taking the time out to come here and interact with our students. A small note in case you all want to find out a little more about Jindal School of Art and Architecture, you can go on to DQ Edge and reach out. I'll share this link in the chat, and you can also click on the application link to apply to Jindal School in 2022. If you are a 2023 student, what you can do is click on this Inquire Here button, and they will be notified, and whenever your next applications are out, and they will reach out to you. So over to Professor Abu and Azad to take this forward from here. The next 1 hour is up to you. All right.
Azad, you're muted.
Thank you, Dion. Thank you so much. So to follow the protocol, let me begin the presentation about this school, quite short presentation. And after that, Abu will take over the workshop. Good. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining the Sunday morning. My name is Azad Ali. I'm the head of admission at Jindal School of Art and Architecture. The college is part of one of the institution of eminence, UP Jindal Global University. If you're not aware, you may just go and find out there are 10 private universities which have been awarded the institution of eminence by the government of India, and Jindal Global University is one of them. Established in 2009, we have been ranked by India world's most trusted ranking body, that is QS World University Ranking, after the Times Higher Education Ranking, which is being globally known. Some of you might know about it. So we have ranked 150th globally under the 50-year-old category. So being the institution of eminence and being the NAC accredited, being considered as a Commonwealth, being a part of Commonwealth universities, Jindal Global University is the only university in Asia Pacific which is maintaining 1:9 faculty-student ratio. That is surprising. At JSAA, we have 1:7 student and faculty ratio. This means that every 9 students at JG wide, we have one dedicated faculty member, which is a full-time faculty member. And this helps you to get a personalized attention from the teaching staff, from the faculty members. So we have been known in India being one of the highest internationally trained and internationally origin faculty members teaching at Jindal Global University, and same at Jindal School of Art and Architecture. So we have faculty members from 30 countries living at JGU. They are total of 15% of a total faculty pool of 1,000 faculty members, full-time faculty members at Jindal Global University. We have been considered one of the safest university for the girls, basically, since we have 47% female students, and that motivates us to make this more a female-friendly place, a learning place. As compared to other universities which are offering STEM courses like science, technology, engineering, and medicine programs, where you find 15 to 85 or 80 to 20 girls and boys ratio, here it's almost 50%. We have faculty members from top 200 universities globally. They are globally trained. You just think about any of the top university that you could remember, or you could have thought about, you will find the faculty members teaching at Jindal Global University. So gradually, let me take you to a short understanding about JSAA. The school established quite early, and we have 4 courses running at Jindal School of Art and Architecture: a 5-year COA approved BR program, 4-year interior design Bachelor of Design degree program, then community and urban development program. This is again a 4-year design degree program, And built environment studies, architecture studies, a 4-year program for those who are looking for an opportunity to become an architecture, but could not pursue physics, chemistry, math, and not able to appear in NATA exam. JSA follows 4-pillar learning philosophy. Let's understand how this helps our students. A flexible and customized curriculum gives you an edge to choose the courses that you want to study. For example, in the foundation year, which is common for all BArch and B-Design and all architecture studies students, you can decide after the foundation year program, you can decide which course you want to study in the second year and which one you want to skip for the third year or maybe fourth year. Additionally, you can choose multiple electives. The JGU offers 300 plus electives all across the programs and the disciplines at JGU wide, and multiple languages which you can learn being a part of Jindal Global University. So our learning curve is a little different than any other architecture school globally. Suppose you choose major a program at JSA, maybe a BArch. If you're an architecture student, I'm sure you all are BArch student today. And if you choose BArch as a major program, a very uniquely designed minors at JSA, which have been designed with the consultation with the faculty members and the school heads, other schools falls under the Jindal Global University. So on the screen, if you see, minor options are available in liberal arts, business studies. We are a number one law school in the country, so legal studies could be another best choice. You can choose film and media, you can choose journalism and communication economics, environment and sustainability studies. If you choose BArch, you can choose interior design as a minor program. If you choose interior design, you can choose community and urban studies, or maybe you can choose virtual environment, which teaches you UI and UX, that prepares you towards a more digital world. That program comes under minor. How this helps? So this gives you an edge. Suppose you study virtual environment along with design, or a sustainability studies with BArch, you get multiple career options, 200 times better than any other architecture student passing out of all these colleges. We have more than 800 colleges in India. So you always stand apart, whether for employment, whether for your projects, whether for your research, whether for your internship, whether for your grant. All these benefits you get priority because you have additional qualification. One, you have additional exposure because you have worked on different projects with the minor and the electives. The second most important pillar is learning by making. So we start giving the facility of live projects from the very first year. And at least you get 2 to 3 live projects during your 5-year journey, and minimum 3 to 4 internships during your 5-year journey at JSAA. So these internships are available in India as well as abroad. So you have multiple options to, there's a partial list on the screen. We have 130 plus collaborations we have done globally, where we are sending our students to go for their internships. Professor Abu Talha is the Assistant Dean for taking care of the industry partnership for the placement as well as for the internships. So in case we have any questions related to, we can take up at the end of the session. The third best part of Jindal Global University is our global reach to the top universities for our international semester exchange, international semester abroad, short-term study trips, as well as master's program that we collaborate with the top universities for the extension program. So suppose you get an opportunity to travel abroad under this international semester exchange opportunity. In that case, you don't need to pay any international fee. But in the international semester abroad, you need to pay the international fee, but not the Indian fee. And these collaborations, these exchange happens with top universities. We have collaborated with Oxford, Harvard, Cornell, University of Arts London, Inchbald, with plenty of universities that we have collaborated. So you have multiple options to explore the global built environment industry through your research, through your internships, through your semester exchange and study trips. So total, we have 335 international collaboration in different parts of the world. JGU has created such kinds of network of the universities. The fourth important and the last pillar that we follow, we understand as our pool of faculty member. As informed in the beginning of the session, the kind of faculty pool at JSA we have, you will not be able to find any kind of similar to this faculty pool anywhere in any design or architecture colleges. So if you see on the screen, in the beginning, we have Dr. Jaideep Chatterjee, who has been pioneer in the architecture industry in India as well as USA. He was there in Cornell University. He studied and he's been teaching there. And then he came back to India and the executive dean of Jindal School of Art and Architecture. Professor Girish Agrawal is an alumni of IIT Delhi as well as alumni of University of California and Berkeley. Then Zai Malpani is alumni of University of Cincinnati in USA. Kilje An is a South Korean professor and he is alumni of Tokyo Institute of Technology. Then Professor Saurabh Banerjee is from CEPT University in Ahmedabad. Professor Abu Talha, you're meeting today, has completed his BArch and MArch from Jamia Millia Islamia University in Delhi. And he's a very popular personality. While Dion was introducing, he has been instrumental in creating a name for the healthcare architecture in India. Tapati is from Syracuse University. Then Anandita Nag is from University of California. Again, Ishita Jain from Ballet School of Architecture. Ravintika is from New York University. Aditya Ghosh is from university in Germany, that is Heidelberg. Then Thomas Mikal, our dean at GSA, is from University of Harvard. Professor Samrud, then Mohit Dhingra is from University of Edinburgh in Scotland. So a partial list again on this slide. Professor Hifzur, Professor Mudassir, Professor Akanksha is again from CEPT. Professor Esther is an alumni of University of Oxford. Then Alok Sen Gupta is alumni of Politecnico di Milano, Italy. And Professor Anandit is from Cairo University. And Sarovar is currently pursuing her PhD from University of Utrecht in Netherlands. So I'm sure the kind of faculty pool, the variety of faculty members and their background, you must visit their profile on our website to understand their area of specialization. So the applications are open. We take admissions through NATA score. We have a fair selection process through counseling. In case you're looking forward to join Jindal School of Art and Architecture, you're most welcome to fill up your application form now. Since we are a boarding university, you need to live in the campus itself. We are 100% boarding university. The cost of the hostel is 2.76 lakh annually. And the 4 lakh rupees per year is the tuition fee for BArch. This hostel fee includes your 4-time meals, all during your stay Monday to Sunday, health facilities, fitness center, all sport facilities, your laundry services, and all medical issues. Great. Thank you so very much. Over to you, Abu.
Thank you, Azad. I hope I'm audible to everybody.
Yeah.
Great. So thank you for the introduction, Dion, and good morning to everybody. It's a Sunday. So I'll actually we'll just try to have some kind of fun. And in the journey of that fun, in the short journey of that fun, we'll just try to, my idea would be, in the next half an hour that, if we can start to look at architecture and films completely differently, okay? If we can do that, right? So, architecture is also part of our lives, right? Films are also very a very intimate, very integral part of our lives, right? It's but the question is this: that can we start to look at it, let's say from a designer's perspective? Okay, let's say from a slightly different perspective, in the sense that, okay, we start looking at it in such a way that it starts to reveal itself in layers. So we are able to create or sort of extract more meaning out of architecture and films, right? I would request, and if that's possible, for the students to sort of make it more interactive. So if you folks can tell me some of the films that you have seen, and then we can just have a quick discussion, and we can just take some cues from the films only. So you can unmute yourself, just say it, or maybe you can write it in the chat box, right? uh, if and I would like to maybe talk about some very, okay, Manu is saying Interstellar, very interesting. uh, how many of you have seen Interstellar? Okay, Life of Pi is also there. So can I just have a quick show of hand for, let's say, Life of Pi? How many of you have seen Life of Pi? I see one hand, I see two hands, I see. Okay, okay, great. So I see a lot of Christopher Nolan fans there. I see Inception, I see Interstellar, I see Tenet. Okay, that's great. So we can just have a, we can just use Life of Pi also as an example. We can use some other movies also as an example. Let's say we can use, Three Idiots also as an example. It's a very famous, popular film which most of us have actually seen. The Amir Khan, Madhavan, and Sharman Joshi, Kareena Kapoor film. Can I also have a raise of hand for Three Idiots? Okay, great. So I think it's good to have a discussion on that, right? But before I move on to these popular films which most of us have seen, and we can just discuss, I can just discuss some scenes and some things which are there in those movies. Uh, I would like to begin this thing, that. Uh, what exactly are we actually talking about when we're talking about cinema and architecture, right? So some years before, I was actually teaching a course on this particular thing, and the name of the course was cinema and architecture, right? And there were some students who were very much interested in films, right? And they were sort of film buffs, and they used to watch film, and they were find it very interesting and meaningful. And so they sort of joined this course, right? In the first class, the students asked me that, what exactly, I mean, we sort of like films, and we sort of enjoy cinema, and we sort of really, we thought that, okay, we will be getting a chance to watch more and more movies in this course. So that's why we have joined this, honestly speaking. But can you tell us what exactly is the purpose behind this course? What exactly are we going to learn from this? One on one side cinema, and the other side architecture, right? They were actually fourth year architecture students, right? They were doing design also, architecture also, mixed bunch. So I said to them something which is very simple, and I want you to keep this in mind next time that you think about this thing. I said, tell me one thing. Uh, don't you think that as architects and designers, you are storytellers? That there is actually a story that you are telling in your projects, right? That it is there actually a story that you are creating, that you are narrating. It's basically a storytelling. Don't you think so? In any project that you are doing, have you thought about it? So then we had a long discussion on how, when we design a project and we make a building and do all of these kind of things, if you think about it, it's a story that we are telling. It's basically a storytelling. It's some kind of a narration that we are doing. There is a method to it. There is a tone to it. There are some metaphors in it. There is symbolism in it. There are words in it which convey a particular kind of a meaning, right? So yes, it is storytelling if you start deconstructing it layer by layer, right? If you peel off the layers and you see what actually is happening, you will realize that yes, it is about storytelling. And so, and then we had a discussion, and then I sort of made them understand that how every film and every piece of cinema, is also essentially its storytelling. It's actually a story that you're trying to tell. Somebody asked Martin Scorsese, who's actually a very acclaimed filmmaker of all time, right? And he has done some amazing movies, that what does cinema mean to you, or what does a good film mean to you? So he said something very simple. He said, a good film means to me that I watch it again and again and again. And every time I watch it, there is something new that I am understanding about that film. There is something new that I am that is sort of striking me. There is some kind of a surprise, there's some kind of an unpredictability that is unfolding before me, even though I have watched that film multiple number of times, maybe 50 times, 100 times, but it tells you something. Why? Because whenever we are, and the same happens with good stories also, we read them again and again and again, and every time we are able to get something out which we were not able to, sort of understand or get out previously. So it has an element of surprises. It has those kind of small spells of magic that it does for us, right? So going back to the discussion that happened with my students, I think it was 2017, so almost 5 years back. So I said, let's look at all architectures as stories, and all the work of a designer, the work of an architect as essentially storytelling. And let us also look at the films and cinema as stories, and the work of a filmmaker simply as a storytelling. And then through this lens or through this frame, then you start decoding everything that is in front of you. You go to a building and you start decoding, oh, what kind of a story is being told to me through this building, right? You see a film and then you realize, oh, what is actually being narrated? What exactly is being talked about, right? So for example, I will actually now, once we have understood this, we can now imagine things very differently and start interpreting and understanding things very differently. Things will really, we will actually be sort of, it will be very exciting to now look at the same thing that we've been looking for the last 15 years, 10 years or something like that. I mean, for me, it was like, 20 years, something like that. And then, get things which we were not able to see, prior. So for example, why do I say that it's actually storytelling and it's actually about stories? What happens in the beginning of the film, right? In the beginning of the film, somebody writes a script, right? A script writer writes a script, right? How does it look like, right? I'll just share my screen. I hope it will be visible to you. I hope it is visible. If somebody can just unmute and say yes, Azad.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. It's
Right, perfect. I hope you can see what is there on my screen. So again, I will be showing you an excerpt of this fantastic film called Ship of Theseus. So Ship of Theseus is a 2012 film directed by Anand Gandhi, and I would request all of you to go and watch it. And it's a different thing. So this is how a screenplay looks like. This is how a script looks like, right? What happens in a script? It is basically a story which you are writing in words. Right? What exactly is a script writer trying to do? A script writer is trying to simply write a story to be made into a film, right? Now, so, what will happen is that, scene one, internal scene, hospital, daytime, and there is a, this is actually the whole background and the context and the environment and the atmosphere, what is happening and etc etc, and then there are dialogues, right? Now a script writer, when right? It is basically a story that the script writer is writing, right? Now, what is happening is when the filmmaker or the director gets this particular story, the next thing that has to be done is essentially that the script has to now turn into a film. Words have now have are supposed to be translated into a film, into a cinema. And this is what I want you to understand, that the most important part in this particular uh, in this puzzle, or in this very interesting relationship between cinema and architecture, is this word called translation. 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 Please look at all films as exercises of translation. Please look at all pieces of architecture, buildings, built environment as having this thing called that they've been translated. Okay. So what is happening is that let's say Azad is writing down a script, right? Words and all that, this is happening, this is happening. So let's say Interstellar, Life of Pi, Three Idiots. What's happening in Three Idiots? There is a script which is being written. That this is what Virus is doing, this is what Chatur is doing, this is what Ranchu is doing, right? And then the interesting part is this: the script writer sits with the filmmaker and the entire filmmaking team, the director, producer, production designer, everybody, and then they constantly brainstorm on how this script, these words, have to be translated into a film, right? The same will happen with any adapted screenplay also, which was actually a book. Let's say there have been multiple films which this filmmaker Meera Nair has made, right? Which were actually books, right? And they have been translated. So what happens is that they have to sit and then they have to think about, oh, okay, so this character has Virus, but how will the office of Virus look like, right? Okay, this character has Raju, who's sort of coming from not a very rich background, whose family is struggling with money. How will that house look like, right? So Farhan's parents are, his father is earning 25,000 rupees, we see that in the film, right? Raju's parents are earning 2,500 rupees, right? How is that going to be portrayed in the film? What kind of a house is going to be Farhan's? What kind of a house is going to be Raju's? What will be how the walls will be, how the spaces will be, right? How the doors will be, how the interiors will be. This is the work of translation. You have to translate what is there in the script onto the film, into the film, right? Something, because we are not going to read the script, we are going to see the house. And so the first thing which happens in cinema, now the same thing also happens in architecture also. So I am a practicing architect, I do projects also. What do we do? The first thing that we do in a project is that we sit down with the client and we make a project brief. So let's say, okay, let me just pick up a student here who was the first one. So Interstellar one, right? So Manu. So Manu Manu wants to get a house built, right? I'll ask Manu, okay, what kind of a house do you want? What kind of rooms do you want? How many rooms do you want? How do you want it to look? How do you want it to feel, right? How do you want all of these things? And this is the script that I have with me. And now what I have to do is I have to translate that script into a design, into a piece of architecture. If the story and not the story, the process and the method remains similar, no matter I'm doing a house, I'm doing a parliament house, I'm doing a big convention center, anything, there is always a script in the beginning. And there is always a piece of art and architecture at the end. And all I'm doing is translating. So translation is a word that you have to always use whenever you are looking at these things. So the first thing is story and storytelling. You have to keep that in your mind and keep thinking about it, keep engaging with it. And we can maybe have another session where we can, have a discussion on what were your thoughts on these kind of things when you thought about all of these things. And the second thing after story and storytelling is translation. And here comes a very important point, which is the most another very important part about architecture and films, whatever you are doing, whatever translation you are doing, is that it has to generate a kind of a belief in the audience, in the viewer, in the client. So a belief and a conviction is a very important. What this means is that you have to narrate your story in such a way, you have to translate your story in such a way that it really generates belief. That you as an audience, when you go and watch Interstellar, when you go and watch Life of Pi, when you go and watch Three Idiots, see what exactly is something that you that really excites you, or that really binds you, that really captivates you, is that the filmmaker has successfully been able to make you believe in the genuineness and the authenticity of that story. We actually think that this is right now happening, or this has actually happened. The distinctions and the binaries between what is real and what is not real completely evaporates on that point, right? So when in Three Idiots, let's say, when Amir Khan and when Friends is actually delivering the baby, right, of Kareena Kapoor's elder sister, right? What is happening is, everybody's sort of crying, and it's a very emotional moment, and we are completely overwhelmed. We know it has not happened in reality, but it's just the way the filmmaker has made us believe in that story. So how do you do that, right? That becomes another very important thing about cinema as well as architecture, and you can learn from cinema, and all can learn from cinema, that how can we make our architecture and design more believable. It should How can we make it more authentic, how can we make it more genuine? So what happens is that there are two important things here, right? One is that you have to create an experience which is multisensorial, right? So when we are watching a film, of course there is the camera, there is the eye that is involved, but also there are ears which are involved, right? There is a hearing sensibility which is involved, right? A lot of narration happens with sound, with music, right? And it actually tells us where we have to go. What kind of an emotion is the filmmaker trying us to feel? How is the filmmaker trying us to believe in the story? And the same thing we do with architecture also. I'll share with you some examples. I'll just play some movies. But if you think about it, how does one create? So, how will you use a particular material? Are you using stone, or are you using earth, or are you using tiles, or are you using marble, or are you using bricks? Now, it actually cuts both ways, right? Think about the architecture of the campus in Three Idiots, right? It's a IIM Bangalore building, somebody rightly said. But think about it. Why IIM Bangalore? What was really very very what was something which actually made it more authentic, right? So whenever we see that campus, there are some very important visual metaphors, right? There is this brick, exposed brick, that we see stones, we see all those kinds of things which we have thought of, or what we see around whenever we see a campus, an educational building, a college building, right? The same thing also applies to when we talk about, let's say, Raju's house. You know, how there is actually, the way Farhan actually narrates Raju's house, that, 24-hour dripping water, and, it's actually, they actually go through a rickshaw kind of a thing, right? It's a small thing. It doesn't have much big spaces. There is no light also. It's also shot in black and white. Very interesting cues which you can take, that, oh, this is how I can narrate my story, right? There is a story. What's the story? The story is that, oh, I have to portray that this is a poor man's house, right? How will I portray it? There are your cues, right? When you go to the real Ranchhod Das house or the palace in Shimla, it's very different. Why? And there are big, huge spaces all around. And they have to show you all of these things for them to make you believe in that story, right? So belief becomes a very important part. So we started with storytelling. It's actually a story which has to be told, which has to be narrated. And in that, the most important thing is that you have to learn how to translate. And in that translation, you have to learn and you have to see that how is it more believable, right? In the interstellar film, what's happening is that it's an almost impossible thing which is happening, right? It's science fiction which is happening, but we believe in that story. It feels to us that, it's actually happening, right? Because of the way in which the story is being told to us, right? Imagine the houses that were there on Earth before, Matthew McConaughey leaves the planet, and now see the houses which exist in the new planet, right? Uh, and you will realize that, oh, how is it different, right? Go back to that house and see how it's very primitive, very simple, how it does not have any complexity. It has very bare bone materials. It's not like a very polished, sophisticated house. Why? Because it is representing something. So here I come to the next part, which is that what is very central to all of these things is that you have to learn something called the language. So language is a very, very critical thing, right? How is it a critical thing? See, everything is actually happening in the realm of language. We can never escape language. Actually, we are always stuck in language. And it is language through which we talk to people, in which we explain our ideas. When we saw the script, it was in a language. When the filmmaker is making a film, it's actually in a language. You understand languages. We understand languages. We understand different kinds of sounds. Some make us, there are some sounds and some musics which are very thriller wala thing. So we are actually on the edge of our seat, right? Oh, something is going to happen. In horror films, whenever there is a jump scare scene which is going to come, there is a particular kind of a sound which will precede that, right? In drama film, when somebody wants you to feel emotional, overwhelmed, cry, laugh, something like that, what is happening? There is a camera which is making you feel that. There is also sound which is making you feel that, and there are also faces of characters and everything. It's actually a total experience, right? What is happening? There is a language in which the filmmaker is talking to you and narrating you stuff. The same is happening in architecture also. There is a language through which the architect and the designer is trying to translate things, is trying to tell those stories. There is a language. There is a language of life. What's happening is, let's say, there is a dark room, okay? And you must have seen those photographs of monuments. Inside of a monument, let's say a tomb, it's all dark inside a tomb, and there's just one jali or just a one peephole in the wall, and a beam of light is coming inside, and it's energizing the entire space. You must have seen those kind of photographs where there's a very stark play of light and shadow. You know that jali and that beam of light is actually energizing the entire dark space of, let's say, a tomb. If we can take an example, what is happening is, and it tells you something because there is a language behind that, because there is a language of light, of darkness, of shadows, of soft light, of hard light, all of these kind of things. So the next thing, and probably the last thing that I want you to think about, and whenever now you go back to your buildings and your films, I want you to think about this thing, that what is the language in which this thing is narrated to me. It can be a building, it could be a film, right? Christopher Nolan. Why do people wait for Christopher Nolan or any other good filmmaker? Is because they all have a language which they have cracked. And people have now understood that language and they believe in that language. So if you see Inception, if you see Interstellar, if you see Tenet, if you see Spectre, if you see all of these kind of films, there is a language which is being followed. It's a language which we have now understood. If you see any filmmaker's work, so let's say I was talking about Three Idiots, we can think about Rajkumar Hirani's work, right? There is a language which he has cracked, in which he talks to us, right? And that's exactly what we go and watch out for. And the more we are acquainted with his language, the more we are able to make sense of the film also, right? So language is a very, very important part and it matters a lot, right? And in the language, I'll just stop here sort of because I don't want to overwhelm you. I just want you to now completely reimagine everything that you have seen and now see things that you have already seen differently, right? So some kind of shifting of uh, perspectives and ways of seeing actually have to sort of now become more and you should be able to see more meaning into otherwise simple things that you have seen, right? And the more you see films from this perspective, you will be able to understand what I'm saying. In this particular thing, the last thing that I would want to tell you is that when we talk about language, when we talk about storytelling, when we talk about narration, when we talk about translation, all of these things, there are three words which I want you to understand and stay with them. There are three things. One is something called text. Text. What is the meaning of text? Something which exists in front of you in plain sight, very, very clearly. So I was reading you a script. That script is the text. You see a film, you see that, okay, Amir, Chatur, and let's say Rancho are having a conversation, right? Are having some kind of a fight. That's a text. But there is also a subtext to it, something called a subtext, which is again very important in every story that you're creating, be it architecture or be it a film. What is the subtext? It is something which is not there, but it is actually somewhere hidden, right? So it is basically somewhere hidden, right? It is hidden beneath, it is under that text. So what is under that text? So if you see Three Idiots, if you see Interstellar, in Interstellar, there are lots of cues for time. In Three Idiots, there are different kinds of cues for, what is happening beneath the film. So what the subtext is that the filmmaker is trying to tell you about uh, a particular character or the particular character's potentials or problems or things to come, etc., etc. The meaning of subtext is that it's not explicitly told to you. It is something that you have to really understand and take you. In stories and in everyday life, we use a very easy and a very fantastic term. We say this is between the lines, right? In between the lines. What does that mean? It means that every two line and every two words have actually some kind of a space, if you think about it, and that space has actually a meaning. It is not that the space is meaningless, right? So that's subtext. The other thing, the last thing which I want you to also always keep with you is something called context. So text, subtext, and context. What is the meaning of context? So context actually means that the word or the thing that you're talking about exists in relation to other words and other things. You are able to laugh at a particular joke in a film because there are many other things which are happening around it, right? You are able to understand and cry at a scene this very again acclaimed filmmaker William Friedkin, who has made some fantastic films, once said that a film is essentially about an emotional experience, right? It should make you laugh or make you cry, make you angry, make you happy. It should be first of all an emotional experience, right? So in that emotional experience, you feel a particular emotion at a particular time because there are many other things which are happening, right? Right. So context. So con actually means together, right? It's a Latin word contextus from where this has been derived, two words, contextus and texture, which actually means to weave. So actually there is things exist in unison, things exist together, right? So text, what is there in front of you explicitly. Subtext, what is not being told to you. You have to look out for those things in order to understand the text more. That will happen in building, that will happen in films. And context, that, oh, what are the other things that are actually making this happen? What are the other things in this frame? What are the other things in this building? If I'm entering a building, oh, why is it in white? Why is it in yellow? Why is sandstone here? Why is a tile here? Why is a marble here? Etc. etc. Right? So these are some of the things which I want you to, keep with you. When we are talking about language, what happens, what matters is mastery over the language matters. You love a particular filmmaker because that filmmaker has mastered that language of telling those stories. You love a particular architecture because that architect has mastered that language. You have to be fluent in that language. You have to have a mastery and over that language, right? So this is how architecture, cinema, and this is how I would, I would request you kind of go back to the films and go back to the buildings that you've already seen and now see them in this light. And then you will realize, oh, it is actually making a lot of sense. And it will give you a method to do your projects, to become an architect, to become a designer, to not just become a designer, but also to become a reader of design. How do you read design and all of those kind of things? So I'll stop here. And before I go, I will share my screen with you, and I will just play two small clips from films. So one film is Ship of Theseus. So I will just play that. There is a small clip, and in that clip, the clip is about how there are various kinds of visual metaphors in that film, right? And I don't, even if you have not seen the film, you will be able to understand just the metaphors through which the filmmaker is telling us about things. And then I will also play another small clip where we will just see how the similar kinds of things have also been done by an architect in a building project. And then we will take questions, right? In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can just write them in the chat box. Okay, I'll just share my screen with you. And okay, I hope my screen is visible to everybody. So let's go with the film first.
You're sitting in a dark room with a group of people, looking at a screen showing some videos captured by a cave explorer who recently died. How would you feel to know that the only thing connecting you with the people sitting around you is that each of you are surviving on a different organ donated by the recently deceased cave explorer? And what you're seeing on the screen right now is through his eyes. So the question is he there in the room right now? Or is he in the room? One of the most thematically complex films of our times is Anand Gandhi's Ship of Theseus. Now, I'll not pretend to have understood the full implications of its many philosophical sub-themes, but what most interested me in the film was the use of visual metaphors. The film revolves around three main characters in three completely different storylines. There is the blind photographer who gets her sight back through a cornea transplant only to realize that she has lost her unique sensibility as a photographer. which she had when she was limited by her blindness. In this shot, her lens cap falls into the stream. And we realize that she cannot put back a lid on the visual riot which she ironically sought out for so long. Then there is the monk who is protesting against the ill treatment of captive animals in research labs and refuses to take medicines for his liver cirrhosis as a form of protest. In this shot, his friends are trying to convince him otherwise, but his resolve is as strong and as hard as the concrete edges around him. Towards the end, when the suffering becomes unbearable, we see this shot of a lush green field as a metaphor for relief and peace, when he finally decides to get a liver transplant. The third story is that of a stockbroker who has undergone a kidney transplant and is happy with his normal, materially driven life. He hates these intellectual discussions, which is evident from his heated conversations with his grandmother. This is until he comes across a poor man named Shankar, whose kidney has been stolen. And out of sympathy, the protagonist travels halfway around the world to Stockholm looking for justice, only to find that all Shankar cares about is getting out of his poverty, even if it means living on a compensation by people who had stolen his kidney. The protagonist is shocked by this indifference, but realizes it as ironically similar to his own mindset in the beginning. This is symbolized by his friend getting stuck in the narrow lanes of Shankar's slums every time they try to reach him.
So I'll just I think the point is being made, and the point is that in the first film, remember how different kinds of metaphors are in place. The camera, the lens cover, it just slips out of her hands, and that is actually telling you something about the story of that protagonist. In the second film, where there's a monk, right? He's very resolute about his beliefs, and he knows, he's very convinced and he's very rigid in that sense, right? There are no curves and there are no compromises that he's trying to do. And how do you narrate? How do you tell that kind of a story? So you use buildings which have edges, right? And so that's how you keep telling all of these kind of things. In the third part, where a poor man is actually sort of stuck, how do you actually tell that? What kind of metaphors do you use? So you actually make the protagonist who walk through a lane where it's so narrow that they're actually stuck. So it actually symbolizes how people are actually stuck, right? A big car actually gets stuck in that neighborhood. Why? Because there's no space, right? So that's how. And now if you think about, and if you go back to the films that you have seen, you will be able to all see these metaphors. You will be able to understand the language in which they are trying to talk to you. And that's the most interesting and exciting part of this journey. I just shared with you another documentary, a 3-minute documentary on this project by Charles Correa, which is called Jawahar Kala Kendra in Jaipur, where similar things are actually trying to happen.
The city planned by Jai Singh, its 18th century ruler, to represent Navagraha, the mandala of the 9 planets. Because of a hill, one of the squares got moved to the other side.
The wonderful thing about Jaipur is that Jai Singh, who was the ruler who built it, had these 2 takes on the sky. One was the oldest myths of the 9 planets, Navagraha. The other was the newest myths of science, which had just started in trying to measure the sun and the moon, but through instruments which were not movable, because that spoils the whole accuracy. These are huge values which science brought, and he combined them both in the city. And I thought that's wonderful, because he was really looking backward and forward in one gesture. Jai Singh was a truly extraordinary man. In a certain sense, perhaps he was the first modern Indian and a precursor of Nehru, who also, when we became an independent nation in 1947, tried to rediscover India's past while simultaneously opening a door to a brand new future.
So when Korea was asked to design this art center in Jaipur in memory of Jawaharlal Nehru, he designed a contemporary building that was based on the same Navagraha, connecting past and present in one integrated gesture in honor of Nehru and of Jai Singh. The brief prepared by the state government listed a number of items, like art galleries, exhibition halls, craft workshops, theatres, and so forth. Korea took these requirements and ingeniously assigned each one of them to the appropriate planet. One of the squares is moved, recalling the gesture of Jai Singh that created the plan of Jaipur. And we find again the pathway that moves through it all, sometimes open to sky and sometimes under cover.
So here you have the 9 planets, and one of them is moved to the right, and that gives the public access to Mangal, which is for the administration, Guru, the library, and Chukra, where the theatres are. That movement gave me access to the mandala. So we enter here. This is where the administration is, Mangal, the planet of power. On this dome, Rajasthan's traditional artists have depicted a giant cosmograph representing the entire manifest world. Every tree, every fish, every animal, every mountain. Similarly, each one of the other 9 planets has its own unique plan and form, illustrating the traditional qualities of that planet, including its auspicious colors.
In the center is the 9th square, an open-to-sky amphitheater. This is crucial, for when you move around through the other squares, you sense your orientation through the glimpses you get of this empty center. On the red sandstone walls of each planet is inlaid its traditional symbol in white marble and black Kadapa stone.
All right. Stop sharing. Okay. So you saw translation, you saw story and storytelling. You also saw a language through which all of these things were, being narrated. And we actually believed in that language. It was actually looking what was being told to us, and we believed in that, right? So this is what I just wanted to share with you all. Thank you so much. And any questions that we have, we can have a discussion on that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Abu. Very enlightening, very interesting session. There are a couple of questions here, and for all the other students here, you can ask your questions now. So one question from Shruti Satish: how do we focus on the details of architecture to convey metaphors?
Yeah. Hi, Shruti. Interesting question. The short answer is that you sort of learn it as you do it. Okay. Even if you, let's say, if in case you are also one of the Christopher Nolan fans, so you can see his first film, which is Following, which released, I think, in 1998. And then you will see how he has evolved from that film Following to his latest tenet. So you actually learn it as you go on. That would be a simpler answer. A slightly longer answer would be that you have to really probe on everything that is available to you, and you have to do it once, see what it is doing. So the process is this: you do something, you design, then you read that design, then you sort of critique that design, then you again redesign, then you again re-critique that design, till the time that you can see that, oh, all the details are now seeing and are now sort of saying what I want them to say, what I actually wanted to say. You see, the same thing happens in a story also, right? If you're writing down a story and if you want to convey a particular emotion or an idea, how would you do it? You will write it first, and then you will see, is this word really telling what I'm trying to tell? Maybe not. Okay, what can be a better word? The same you will do in buildings also. Okay, is this material saying the thing that I want to say? Maybe not. Okay, what can be another material? Is this a space saying what I want to say? So I wanted to say, let's say your idea is to go for some kind of an enlightenment. You want to show enlightenment, right? And I'm just telling you one of the ways in which you can do it. And you create a big courtyard, or a space where light is actually coming from all sides. But when you review that design, you realize, oh, light is actually everywhere in this space. If I have to really create that feeling, I have to first of all make it dark, and then maybe just make a puncture or a hole in the wall, in the roof, so that a beam of light comes in. That contrast is very, very evident to the eye, to the user, right? And so that's how you are now relating architectural details to metaphors, right? You are looking at those things. So the process and the method is that you do it, you critique it, then you redo it, then you re-critique it, till the time the details and the metaphors are synced. Okay. I hope that gives you some kind of an answer to start with.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks so much. There's a question from Sanjana. Is it possible to get into film set design after having studied architecture?
Yeah, we actually say this in every talk that we have with students, in all of our open houses, that and it's very unfortunate that architecture has been reduced to just architecture of mainstream buildings. Like, architecture has been reduced to architects. That's a huge tragedy. See, architecture is basically built environment, right? So whenever you are seeing a film, there is an architect and a designer who's working with Raju Hirani on Three Idiots, working with Christopher Nolan on Interstellar. Now, what kind of a house can I create? What kind of sets? What will this particular house convey? What will this set kind of convey? So yes, yes, yes. You can become a set designer. You can become a game designer. You can become anything that has to do with space, form, buildings. It could be in a film. It could be in reality. There is a huge scope in this particular theme. In fact, some students of mine who did architecture with me have now pursued masters in screenplay and writing and set designing from US and UK universities. Very, very close students of mine, and are now sort of working as set designers and production designers. So yes, one of the students actually worked in this film, Amazon Prime series called Unpaused, which released, I think, last year, which was about how lives changed in coronavirus. So yeah, absolutely. I have another question by Veda. Hi Veda. When creating a scene in a film, how do we ensure that the architecture enhances the scene? By mastering that language, by again by first of all doing it, and then seeing and reviewing and critiquing what you have done, right? So you tell a story, but then you review that, is the storytelling really what I wanted to do, right? That's how you ensure that the architecture enhances the scene. Also, you can think and give more attention to the color, texture, background, furniture of a particular scene, right? So for example, if there is a chair that you want to use, what will be the design of the chair? Will it be a contemporary chair, right? The one in which I am sitting on, very, very office kind of a chair? Or will it be a very baroque, historical, classical kind of a chair, antiquity, which represents antiquity? So the more attention that you pay on individual aspects of architecture, of building, of the space, you will be able to get more out of it, right? It could be a simple wall, like the one that is there behind me. But the moment I have some kind of a bookshelf with that wall, it suddenly gives you a meaning to it. You suddenly think about the character very differently, right? If on this wall I had some moldings which we generally see in Europe, in European historical architecture, you would have now understood, and it would have conveyed something which is very different, right? So you pay attention to all of these small things. See, have you paid attention to him? If you have not, if you have, then you review them, you critique them. If you haven't, then you do it. Right? Is it in the way we've cinematically shoot it? Yes, absolutely. That's the whole idea of the translation from script to screen. Like in Mani Ratnam's Tamil film Kadhal Kanmani, the way they have shown contrast of the architecture in Mumbai and Ahmedabad stands out. Absolutely, absolutely. Right. And you will see in all kinds of films. You will see in all kinds of films. So yes, spot on. The idea is to be very empathetic and very sensitive to all these small things. That's how you will develop a language. That's how you will master language. Arvind has a question. I have a question. If we are creating a horror short film, how can we create a reality to it? How can we create a reality to it? That's a, I mean, see, every filmmaker has their own ways of creating realities. So even horror films by, let's say, a filmmaker like this very famous filmmaker here. I'm not very good with names. I'm so sorry about it. But let's say William Friedkin has a different kind of a way of making horror films, right? In India also, you will have to sort of, you will really have to figure out on your own. One trick that I can tell you is that you have to create a totality of experience. So if you are trying to, let's say, if you are trying me, who is your audience, to really feel that kind of a horror, right? Then you have to make it happen for me through sound, through camera, through the positioning of the camera, the panning of the camera, the movement of the camera, right? Everything you have to be you just have to keep one thing in mind, that I have to make the person believe and feel this horror and eliminate everything that is coming in between. You see what I'm saying? Do it and then see, is it really happening? Is somebody feeling horror? So just be very focused on that particular thing and make everything at your disposal. Do that, right? Could be a painting on the wall, right? Which is actually very, sort of ominous. It could be the light. It could be a way, how do people make, in all of these horror films, what happens is that there is always some kind of a disturbance in the in the basement, right? And then the protagonist and the character has to go down, right? And that's when we seriously start feeling that horror, right? These are all tropes and tricks, right? So you will have to find your own ways, but it's not necessary that everybody has to go down. Sometimes people can go up to top story. So, but be very focused on that. Is what I would say. Does Anika is asking, so does using a storytelling process for every design create more meaning to it? Yes, without a doubt. That's the whole idea, that you have to consider your designs, your projects, film or architecture as a stories, and you have to constantly learn the art and skill of translation, telling, narrating, language. Absolutely. Any other questions, folks? Yeah.
Right.
I hope it was you. I mean, of course, it's a very short session, so I don't have very great expectations out of it. But I hope that the next time you see a film that you have already seen, or maybe a new film, or maybe a building, you will be able to take more out of it than you did till now.
Oh, thank
That's
you
my
so
only
much.
small hope.
Thank you so much, Abu. It's been a brilliant session. In fact, Anushka's written, thank you so much for this amazing and descriptive session. She also goes on to say this really brought an insight into many other interesting things included in architecture. So thanks a lot for that. A couple of points. I've shared the links in the chat box of a little more information about JSAA. So if you'd like to click on that link, you'll reach to the DQ Edge listing of JSAA, and you can reach there. I've also pasted a link to the 2022 application form for those of y'all who are considering applying to JSAA. All right. I see a final question from Arvind. We've run out of time, Arvind.
Yeah, Arvind, I'm sorry, but I have not actually seen this film. So I will have to really see Aquaman, and then maybe I can come back to you. So give me some time for it.
Right, and to get back to Abu, you can always reach out to Azad. Azad, if you can probably type in your mobile number here. All right. So any questions that you'll have, please reach out to Azad. Okay, but thank you so much for attending, Azad and Abu. You'll have been great. Azad, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dion. Before we conclude this session for today, I'm sure you all have learned something interesting, and architecture and cinema, that's one part that whatever you must have thought of. But there are 100 more career options that you can choose as an architect, not only practicing as a licensed architect, but the 100 more career options that you can choose in audit firm, that's a consulting firms, game design. There's plenty of career options available nowadays. So just explore and keep visiting, talking to our people available on our Twitter account, Instagram account. If you follow our Instagram handle, you can reach out to Professor Abu as well. And a lot of students from Bangalore and different parts of the country, you can reach out and have your questions with these existing students in the system. Thank you so much.
And
Dion, I see two hands raised.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Venki,
Looks like by mistake.
Okay,
I think that was during your session.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was during your session.
Right. Also, one more thing, we are inviting JSAA once again, I think on 17th Feb, to do an e-meet your design school or architecture school. So Azad, I think Swati will be in touch with you. So I want all the students here to please attend that meeting. That's going to be a lot more about the school and the programs that they offer. And we look forward.
Yeah,
to
you'll meet the top leadership, academic leadership of Jindal School of Art and Architecture on the coming days.
Yeah.
That will be available for you. Great. Thank you so much. Wonderful, everybody. Thank you, Dion, Swati, and Abu, Aditi, Varun. Have a wonderful Sunday. Bye-bye.
Have a nice Sunday, everybody. Bye-bye.